Hello, my name is Katie McRae, and in this presentation, I'll be analyzing how my understanding of race has changed in the various lessons I have learned in Professor Price's Blackness and Racialization freshman seminar. From a young age, my understanding of race was based on my elementary school's Black History Awareness Month, where we learned about people such as Ruby Bridges, Rosa Parks, and Jackie Robinson. As I got older, my mother's research on the civil rights movement, specifically white women's roles in continuing segregation, shaped my understanding. When I got to Professor Price's freshman seminar, my understanding of race was mostly based on color. But as he introduced us to the historical, social, structural, and institutional, and individual, intimate, and personal aspects of race, my understanding became a lot broader. I learned about things such as race theory, race making, how the continued forms of discrimination are still present today, and how individuals experience and are affected by race in their everyday lives. I've also learned several lessons throughout the course of Professor Price's teachings and the readings that we have completed this semester. The first being the concept of whiteness as normative. In Peggy McIntosh's Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack, she outlines how people's cultures influence how they are treated and the importance of understanding one's culture. In Richard Dyer's Introduction to White, he takes this one step further by examining whiteness as study and how normativity, reflexivity, and embodiment come into play with how white people see themselves and are represented in media.
The Cabrini Green Project is what public housing has come to symbolize in Chicago for more than a quarter of a century. But in an effort to disperse the city's poor, who are mostly black, the new public housing proposals call for construction of duplexes, two-story townhouses, three-story apartment buildings, all to be scattered in the predominantly white areas of Chicago. This lot on Kaminsky Avenue is one of 275 sites identified under federal court order by the Chicago Housing Authority for low-income families. It would have a duplex on a street of single-family homes, and the homeowners are obviously upset.
All I got to say is, all the do-gooders, all the people that are always telling us what to do, they don't practice what they preach. Why don't they go over there and put them by their neighborhoods? They won't do it. They're always telling us what to do.
The next lesson I learned was about the modernized forms of historical discrimination. In this video, you can see footage during white flight in the 1960s in Chicago's projects. This was translated from slavery into housing discrimination, where people didn't have the rights to choose where the homes that they lived in or have access to equal opportunities. The next lesson I learned was the idea of vulnerable people and how this has transitioned from mainly African American people into Latino people in the present day. This issue is especially close to me because in my town, undocumented immigrants are brought into work and then are arrested by the sheriff after picking season. And this is something that affects the children that I go to school with and their families. And it also shows the role they play in social, structural, and institutional discrimination in this continued cycle of oppression and unequal opportunities. Another lesson I learned was that the past is always with us. This has been highlighted in almost every single reading and lesson that Professor Price has taught us. And whether it be modernized forms of oppression or repeated patterns, we can look to the past to see what the future will bring and how it shapes us today. The last lesson I learned was the importance of organizing current struggles and the importance of confronting domination and making our own we and difference in the world. From these lessons, I've learned several important concepts that will influence my present and my future. The first is to become self-aware and self-critical, to examine my own privileges, to expose invisible advantages in order to redesign these oppressive social systems. The next is to think critically about how the past influences the future, like recognizing the structures of social, structural, and institutional discrimination and exposing these modernized forms of oppression. Additionally, I can organize current struggles. As Professor Sider said, it is important to enact change during chaos. At a politically chaotic time in America, this is when people must come together and unite across all fronts to fight for change.
Country this weekend, hundreds were arrested in ongoing protests over police shootings of black citizens. Largely peaceful protesters blocked roadways in several cities, including St. Paul, Minnesota. Philando Castile was fatally shot by a police officer in a suburb of St. Paul last Wednesday. On Saturday, around midnight, St. Paul police deployed smoke bombs as protesters threw objects, refused to leave Interstate 94. Police.
In this video, you can see as hundreds of Black Lives Matter's peaceful protesters are being arrested as they protest the deaths of African American men who were killed by police in Baton Rouge and St. Paul, Minnesota. Ironically, as they are protesting police brutality, they experience police brutality themselves. This is one example of why it is important to unite against a single cause. In conclusion, this class has taught me the importance of gaining a fuller understanding of race so that I can recognize these repeated forms of discrimination, so that I can examine my own impact on race, and so that I can continue to push and inform others for a better tomorrow.